What's the one thing you regret doing for your wedding day? Story 1. Not preparing a speech? I thought I'd just go up, thank everyone for coming and sit back down, short and sweet, get it out the way. That's exactly what I did, without mentioning my parents or my wife. Story 2. Inviting 75% of the people. Most of them I never see and are not involved in our lives. Would have rather spent the same amount of money on 25% of the people and had one of a high-end party. Story 3. Not paying attention to the photographer more. We gave him a list of things he needed to shoot for portraits, and he forgot to get a picture of me, my wife, and my parents. Story 4. Inviting people I didn't really want to invite. They just cost you money, you don't interact with them at all, and they usually don't bring a nice gift to make up for it. Except for letting all of the divorced aunts and uncles bring +1 ESS, because that led to a whole jealousy competition train that was extremely entertaining. Story 5. I regret the coordinator they gave us for the ceremony. Dude got flustered and started second-guessing everything right before the ceremony. Like he somehow forgot how a wedding works at the last moment, when all of our guests were there. OMG, what song do you want to play while she walks down the aisle? I don't know, dude, the one everyone walks down the aisle to. The wedding song. The one we already told you to play. I ended up taking charge and sorting everything out. Really wish I could have just gone with the flow on my big day. Story 6. Not taking a picture. We just did a quick wedding for legal purposes with my friend presiding and aunt and uncle as witnesses. It was a nice little sweet ceremony that lasted about 10 minutes over a nice area with a view before we went to dinner. Didn't realize we hadn't taken any pictures until like a week later when we wanted to show someone. Whoops. Story 7. I've been married for 16 years now, so this is a little old school. We bought a bunch of disposable cameras and set them all over the place at our reception with a note on them that said, "Take some pictures." At the end of the night, we collected all the cameras and had the film developed. Most of them turned out really cool, and we got some pictures we would have never thought of taking. The regret comes in me underestimating some of my friends' ability to be adults for one night and ended up with a lot of pics also. LOL. I'm guessing a lot of people getting married today could just set up an Instagram account and just have everyone upload cell pics to it. Story 8. My number one regret is telling people not to take pictures. I know it sounds dumb, but it is much worse than that. In our agreement with our photographer, she told us that other cameras were not allowed as the flash from another camera could ruin our pictures. So we politely told people to refrain from taking pictures and explained the situation. We had a great wedding, and the photographer even sent an extra photographer to work the wedding, 2 instead of 1. A few weeks after we tried contacting her for the photos, we got ghosted. We tried for about a year to track her down. We were still willing to pay for the photos, even unedited. We just wanted the photos. Fortunately, some people didn't get the message, so we have a few 10, 20 photos from our wedding. The worst part was that someone had contacted my wife through FB 2 weeks before the wedding warning us about her, but we decided to take the risk because there probably was no way to get another photographer in that kind of time. When she showed for the date, we were relieved and thought we dodged a bullet. Story 9. Not paying for a cleaning company at my venue. Me, my wife, and wedding party had to still 2 hours later to clean up to get our deposit back. Edit. Holy, this kind of blew up. To go in a little further, me and my wife got married through a venue company that owned a few venues throughout the area. This one happened to be a restored barn. The company allowed us to either pay a $400 or something, it was a few years ago, cleaning deposit, or to pay a $200 or something cleaning fee. The deposit was refunded depending on how well you cleaned up after. To save more money for the honeymoon, we choose deposit, and us and the wedding party stayed 2 hours later to clean up the venue. I don't know if this was a US thing, only really looked at the one venue, and my wife fell in love with it. The $200 cleaning fee was so they could pay another company to clean. Story 10. Not hiring a photographer. We thought we'd save money and just ask friends to take lots of pictures. They took some asterisk, but I have maybe 5 pictures worth looking at. No pictures of the cake or table settings. I kind of remember what they look like. The only decent pic of my husband and I has our flower girl in it. She's sweet and I love her, but it looks like she's our kid. Every time people see the photo, they're like, "I didn't know you had an older child. Hire a photographer, people." Story 11. Letting other people help pay. As soon as that happens, they take over the wedding. Guest list, decor, cake, everything. Edit. Wow, this post blew up. I guess people have different experiences, but let me lay out some of mine. Uncle offered to pay for the limo. Great. But it turned out to be this busted 1980s limo with a spiderwebbed window and no hubcaps. What looked like a homeless driver. He literally went on Craigslist and got the cheapest one with no research. We called an Uber. In-laws offered to pay for half of the catering, which is how our guest list was 70 people, but 200 plus showed up. Would have been fine if they would have told us so we could adjust catering, but no. We had to have the caterers adjust on the fly and drag some tables out of storage, and then we had to order pizza for the rest. People we actually wanted there were eating fucking pizza on dusty tables. Other uncle offered to pay for airfare for the honeymoon. which is how an 18-day trip turned into 12 days because that was the cheapest ticket. Brother-in-law paid for the wine, which actually turned out fine. But we didn't have enough because of all the completely unexpected guests. All we wanted was a smallish celebration with 75 people and to have an awesome wedding. But we wound up with a big celebration that was kind of mediocre. And really stressful. In-laws actually told us we could not say hi to our actual friends because then we'd have to go to each table and say hi to everyone to be fair, which would have took 2 hours, which caused an argument. Maybe your families aren't that type. But I wish we had just did our own thing and not accepted any help. Story 12. The preacher started coaching me on what's next, as my gorgeous bride-to-be was walking down the aisle. I did not get to take in what was the most beautiful woman I ever saw walk down the aisle because I was trying to pay attention to what he was saying. Story 13. Renting a nice room in a fancy hotel, and then expecting to have when we were both just absolutely fucking exhausted. Don't get me wrong, my wedding day was possibly the best day of my entire life, but it would have been just the teensiest bit better if we'd gotten some charming bed and breakfast and not forced ourselves to have tired at like 1 in the morning. Turns out fancy hotel rooms are basically just like a clean version of non-fancy hotel rooms. Not that my poor would have known that beforehand. Story 14. Paper invitations and RSVPs. Set up a wedding site and have people RSVP there. The amount of stress I put myself through trying to get paper mailed back to me in an era when no one uses mail anymore was so unnecessary. At one point, we'd gotten very few RSVPs back, and I had a total crying meltdown about how no one was going to come. Of course they were going to come, it's just no one uses mail anymore. Save yourself the headache and the money. It's my biggest wedding regret. Story 15. Not hiring an Elvis impersonator. Flew all the way to Vegas to get married, didn't get Elvis. Oh well. Edit. Well, this blew up. Thanks everybody, this is now my most upvoted thing, which is insane. FYI, for those wanting to elope to Vegas, it is super fun and I would not talk anyone out of it. I will say that we were married at the Luxor Chapel, which was very nice, and the officiant was really great. We would have had to go find our own Elvis officiant, hired them, and then paid the chapel to use the room, so it didn't make sense. BTW, you can have an amazing time in Vegas without spending a ton of money. Edit 2. The wife and I have plans to renew our vows on our 10th anniversary and do a small but decent wedding. We can finally afford to get her a dress and a venue and all that, so that's what we'd like to do. We're at 2 years now. Story 16. This will sound petty, but I regret wearing my hair up. It felt so unlike me, and the sticky layers of hairspray wouldn't brush out when I got undressed that night. Story 17. Not having a good breakfast. We got married early in the day on a beach, and all I could think about was how much I wanted a breakfast sandwich with eggs, cheese, and bacon on a toasted English muffin with just a touch of hot sauce. Story 18. Right before our first dance, I got nervous about dancing in front of a crowd due to a middle school dance trauma. And, I'm not proud to admit, my pants. Full-blown nervous blast, like a fire hose attached to a tank of chocolate pudding. My bride found me hiding in a toilet stall and had to fetch me new pants. I still can't look her brother square in the eye, and know he didn't go pantsless for the rest of the wedding. Story 19. I, the groom, accidentally wore Christmas socks with a clearly visible Santa face peeking out as I moved. Story 20. I actually just popped in here to read all the comments and to say thanks to the OP for posting this. As someone with a very nervous bride-to-be, this list will help me to get some focus on things I may have not thought about or put much weight into. Thanks OP, and to everyone who posted here. Story 21. Haven't gotten married yet, but one thing people forget is that they are actually supposed to enjoy their wedding. I've been to a couple weddings, and in most of them, the bride and groom are running like chickens without heads, trying to make everything perfect. Your wedding is supposed to be the best day of your life, not a miserable event. Don't get stressed over the little things and enjoy yourself. Story 22. If I could go back in time and do it over, I'd have included dancing with my dad this time. The story. We got engaged and started planning a wedding that was to take place 1 year later. 2 months after engagement, my father was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. We moved up the wedding by 6 months and thankfully were able to get our deposits back. My aunt had a large home, and to spend as little as possible, my parents needed all the money they could to pay the bills since my dad couldn't work due to his treatment and he'd owned his own business. We got married at her home with 70 guests plus a bridal party of 12. Husband has 3 brothers, I have 1, and both of our best friends are men, so that was 6 guys and had to have 6 girls then. It was a bit crowded, so we didn't have room to plan for dancing. My father walked me up the aisle for the ceremony, and that was my goal in moving the wedding forward. I wish I'd have had is do a father-daughter dance, though, even if we didn't have other dancing. My dad died 3 months later. Story 23. Hiring my wife's friend as the DJ. We gave him simple cues and songs, which he completely fucked up and then went on to play Hindi dance music for the Indian segment of the dancing instead of Bhangra, as very explicitly instructed. Worst of all, our first dance was to that shitty song from Ghost instead of Dance Me to the End of Love as requested. Fuck that guy. Edit. Just to clarify, the guy was a professional DJ, but not usually ever a wedding DJ. It's a very different skill set. Edit 2. I should also add, the one thing he didn't up was my Walking Down the Aisle song, which was the Curb theme song. Story 24. So the one thing I'm wicked glad we did and always advise people to do is take a moment to enjoy it. After we ate and went around saying hi to all the tables, we took like 5 minutes while everyone else was finishing dinner and went and sat outside. It may have been brief, but it really allowed us to appreciate what was going on and enjoy each other for a second. Story 25. My husband and I surprised people with our wedding. We invited his parents, my parents, and a few friends over for dinner and announced we were getting married. I don't regret any of that. What I do regret is allowing his mother in the bathroom with me while I finished getting ready. She spent a good 30 minutes telling me how I was ruining her son's life because I can no longer have children. I was so badly shaken by all of the bullshit that when it came time for I do, I said, yeah, sure, I guess. Story 26. We had lovely little wedding. Small, inexpensive, informal, fun. Yet I totally regret not taking it more seriously and investing more time and money in it. I guess we were so put off by all the crazy, intense, expensive weddings we had been to in our lives, we went too far in the other direction. We had been together for 8 years at that point and didn't think marriage was going to change anything, and even having a wedding at all seemed a little silly at the time. But in the end, we realized what a beautiful, intimate thing it was, how much better it could have been, and how many more people that we love we could have shared it with. It's a great story to tell people you got married for $400 in someone's backyard, wearing a $90 dress, a tie with sharks all over it, with 12 close friends and family members, and then had pigs in blankets with Prosecco. But I don't think it is nearly the rich memory and special time it could have been for us. We were a little too cool for school on this one. Story 27. Absolutely nothing. The only money spent was on the license. We told no one, except for 2 friends, we needed witnesses, until afterwards. Cheap, no family drama or anyone putting in their 2 cents about anything, no stress or planning. 10/10 would recommend. Story 28. Not exactly a regret, because we ended up enjoying our day a lot. Originally, my husband and I wanted to elope abroad with just our parents and have a holiday out of it. Being from a large Irish family, this went down like a ton of bricks and caused massive arguments. So we compromised, which did upset and annoy me a lot at the time, and ended up having a wedding in Ireland, neither hometown, just somewhere in the middle. But only immediate family came, so ended up being 28 of us, and we had a lovely day. However, both of us still have relatives that refused to speak to us because they weren't invited and couldn't understand why we only wanted something small. All of them presumed it was money related, which it completely was not. Just neither of us are fussy and don't like that much attention. That was 2 years ago. We aren't bother. They showed their true colors. Anyway, like I said, not a regret, but a little annoyed we had to compromise in the first place. Story 29. I really wish we had the ceremony videotaped. We spent a decent chunk of money on the photographer, and our photos look great. We didn't think we wanted a video at the time, but a year and change later, I really wish we did. Story 30. There were a couple people that we decided to not invite. More accurately, we needed to cut a few after booking the hall and realizing how many we could fit in the room. I didn't realize how hurt those few people would be. They brought it up years later. I still feel bad about it. My wife's uncle and his wife are horrible people, and they brought people that weren't even invited and basically forced them into their already full table. It was awkward. I regret inviting them and not inviting the hurt friends that I mentioned above. Story 31. My biggest regret is that it all felt so rushed. We were engaged on NYE and got married at the end of August, having settled on a date in May. The summer was a whirlwind of planning while both of us worked full-time jobs. We got married on a Sunday in a city, Montreal, 6 hours from where we lived, Toronto. We both worked the previous Friday and were back home on Monday to leave for our honeymoon on the Tuesday, which involved a lot of driving around and then jumping back into the grind pretty much the day after we returned. In short, I would have taken a few days off work to relax and get into the holy, I'm about to get married headspace, and I would have opted for a more relaxing honeymoon. Story 32. We eloped, and I don't regret that at all. When my husband and I were in our B&B room having our own personal champagne toast, I was recording it with my phone, and I recorded it in vertical instead of horizontal orientation. When I uploaded it to the computer and created a whole photos video thing with footage from our ceremony, it totally ruined the aesthetic. This is my greatest regret. Story 33. Not delegating enough. I planned, organized our wedding, handmade all my invites, bought super cheap materials from China, and handcrafted decorations, etc. I mean, even went to flower markets the day before and put together all my bouquets and flowers for reception. All that was fine. But on the day I wish I had delegated some more jobs to the bridal party, I did go through the schedule for the day with them and asked could they help out and keep an eye on proceedings and help direct any guests, etc. We only had 50 guests anyway, so small affair. Edit. I guess I should have given more explicit instructions to specific people, maybe. But on the day, I was still corralling people for photos, using my teacher voice to let people know where to go next, etc. And our tea ceremony got delayed for 30 minutes because various family members wandered off and didn't show up on time. And I, the bride, was madly rushing through the hotel and surroundings looking for them. And it didn't even occur to me at that moment that I should have asked my bridesmaids, my cousin and my Sil, to go look for them instead. LOL, they were just sitting at the tea ceremony area. It wasn't until the next day my mom told me that she loved the wedding, but she wished my bridesmaids had helped me out a bit at all, that I realized I had still been directing everything the day before, and that it was very tiring. Edit 2. Oh yay, and the food! Both my hubby and I were too tired / pumped / busy to enjoy our food properly, but it looked really delicious. And I even got a bigger dress just to allow my tummy to expand a bit. XD, oh well. Story 34. Having a wedding at all. No, not because of the lovely person I married. We're still very happy, 7 years later. So, our wedding was kind of a mess. We were planning to just get hitched at the courthouse, and then have a picnic with our friends and family after the fact. We didn't have much to our name, but we had been together for some time, so this was a fine plan for us. Well, we got our wedding license, and my husband's grandmother took it upon herself to plan a wedding for us in 3 days by taking advantage of their family reunion that happened to be going on. She got dollar store decorations, a Costco cake, and some random guy from her sister's church who was ordained by one of those online churches and called it good, pretty much. Well, we get to the reunion after calling our 2 closest friends at the literal last minute to show up, and then his grandmother interrupts the family reunion, where we didn't know anyone, and they didn't know who the we were either, by the way. Okay, guys, look over here. These 2 are getting married, and passes out little bags of seed for everyone. She had us burn a CD of some music we would like, so we had some pretty low-key, pretty-sounding video game music playing on the barely audible boombox because we had no idea what we wanted to play, and didn't care, really. The ceremony begins. We had a quote from a book we had picked out. The officiant is this older gentleman who has apparently never done this before, and he gets so nervous from stage fright that he hands the paper over for my husband to read instead. The ceremony finishes, we walk off, and the people straight up pelt us with the fucking seed. We then signed our marriage certificate, ate some sheet cake, and awkwardly sat off by ourselves with our 2 friends like, what the just happened, while trying to pick birdseed out of my hair. This was on a farm though, and so the chickens were very happy. Story 35. Having a wedding. We wanted to do City Hall and hiring a photographer for photos in the park. Spouse is an only child, and MIL wanted a wedding, so we sucked it up and put together a small one. She did pay for half of it, but I still would have preferred spending the money on literally anything else. Story 36 gave a heartfelt speech that ended with a joke, the punchline being, and your presence here means almost as much as the envelopes you brought with you. Crickets. I still cringe. Story 37. Letting my parents decide the whole thing for me and not sticking up for what I wanted. Also, the groom managed to utterly me off during his speech by basically saying, I only became friends with you because I felt sorry for you, and a teacher put me up to it, but then I found out you're actually a cool person and I fell for you. Like, what? What I wanted. Small, cozy wedding in the Missouri Botanical Gardens, rose section because I truly love roses, with maybe 50 people tops, all close friends and family. I wanted to get married under an arch covered with flowers and have my girls' flowers, and have that be it. White chairs for the guests with some fans on the chairs to cool themselves, as well as some lemonade or tea available before they sat down that they could pour themselves. The reception would be basically drinking, dancing, a photo booth, per usual in 2011, dinner, hopefully served, but I was totally down for a buffet style, as long as it was good food. The reception would be inside, and air-conditioned because Missouri summers. Then, husband and I would go somewhere private and snooze until we left to go home the next day. No big deal. What I got? $80K wedding that my parents insisted on. My garden plans got shot down as being inconsiderate to the guests. They'll get hot. They'll get sunburned. That's uncomfortable. What happens if it rains? The tent the gardens provide are fucking ugly. Don't do that. The wedding, reception, and cocktail hour were all held in the same building with 230-ish people invited, the vast majority of which I had no idea who they were. Dinner was $100 a plate and served by a fully dressed-up waitstaff who served everyone at the same time in some lavish display I was not prepared for. My bouquet was massive, literally almost as long as my entire lower body, and heavy because it was straight-up orchids. Everywhere I looked were orchids sunk down in vases of water with floating candles just chilling out, and crystals draped from things. It was just over-the-top opulence that I was oddly disconnected from. It was someone's wedding, but it sure as didn't feel like mine. My parents basically paid for it, which was fine, and insisted that the wedding isn't about you guys. It's really about us, and for us to show you 2 off. Hence, the guests were their guests. The meal was what they wanted. The decor and location was what they wanted. My aunt tried to make me pick a different type of cake than what I wanted, but I don't negotiate on cake. Finally, groom basically spent no time with me the whole day except during pictures. He decided to turn the whole thing into a 3-day bender where he happened to get married in the middle. His own words, not mine. He didn't dance with me, just his best man, and spent the whole time at the bar or in the photo booth with other people. Overall, everyone was super impressed. I was happy for the reason behind the event, but not the event itself. I realize that sounds ungrateful given the cost and everything, but I just felt like I was a trophy being shown off to everyone by my parents, rather than a bride hosting a moment of love and commitment and fun with her closest people. Story 38. After the wedding, we went to our reception, the wedding party, etc. Had their own theme songs to come out too. Then comes out my wife and I. We had a few drinks in us by this point. We were supposed to do a whole dance entrance type of thing. I can't dance, so I got nervous and reverted to grinding my wife in front of 300 people. That was the most cringeworthy moment of my life, LL. Story 39. My husband and I were just recently married a few weeks ago. We had been planning for a huge wedding with the catering and the bar and the DJ and everything, and I was just stressed. I was crying every night from frustration. I didn't want to do it. That's not to say that I didn't want to marry the most amazing man. I just didn't want to feel like animals in a zoo to please everyone. Even with severely limiting the guest list, there were still like 60, 70 people I didn't know that I didn't care to have there. And quite frankly, I didn't want to spend $100 plus on some cousin's kid that we had to have there to please my in-laws. So on a Sunday night, after breaking down in tears, my husband looked at me and said, "Let's just go to the courthouse and get the papers." We discussed it with our parents, and we decided to run and get the papers and then just have a small, intimate backyard ceremony with the friends we cared about and close family. His family has a farm in the mountains. I got to ride in on a horse, and we got pizza delivered and had cake and ice cream from the grocery store. We pulled the whole thing off in 36 hours. My one regret is planning for months and being stressed before we decided to do something that would make us happy. Neither of us like being the center of attention. We wanted to save money since my husband is getting his PhD and I'm finishing my bachelor's. We knew we wanted to marry each other, so why do we need to worry about pleasing anyone else? If you're thinking about getting married, do what will make you happy. Those that love you will support you and be there no matter the circumstance. I'm so glad that I get to look back on my wedding and think about getting to help my cute husband get dressed. My mom sneaking in a flask and sharing her vodka with all my friends, getting to take pictures in a pasture surrounded by my horses, and not the stress and frustration. Story 40. Making cupcakes instead of buying a cake. We did a lot of DIY, made the beer and mead for toasts, assembled flowers and centerpieces, because it was cheaper, but also we like making things. But the cupcakes, in retrospect, were a ton of work, and not that great. Story 41. Not huge, but if I did it all again, I wouldn't waste time on a garter or bouquet toss. I think they're pretty antiquated traditions, and they weren't at all necessary. Story 42. My wife and I got married at Pinstripes last month. Pinstripes is a really upscale bowling, bocce, and bistro bar. Awesome place. We went to an event beforehand there which had a few giveaways. We won free bowling for our Sunday brunch but really wanted to win the free gelato bar, but that went to another couple. Fast forward a few weeks later, our planner tells us the couple that won the gelato bar had to back out from booking with Pinstripes, likely too expensive. But our planner loved us and wanted us to have the gelato bar. Yes, I'm a huge ice cream fan and toiled over the flavor choices. My wife and I went back and forth more on this than any other decision in our wedding. In the end, we picked out 3 flavors, but wound up getting 4 at the wedding. I didn't even see the gelato bar at the wedding. I was so excited for it, but we were too busy with everything else that we completely missed it. Our guests loved it, especially my nephews. They were smart little brats who asked aunts and uncles at different tables to bring them up for their first cup of gelato, even though they just finished eating a cup. Didn't bowl at brunch either. But I fucking loved my wedding. It was so much fun. Story 43. So I had a courthouse marriage with my wife, later having a celebration not too many days later, so more could be in attendance. Given how the celebration was planned before we even did anything with the courthouse, I honestly regret inviting anyone to the courthouse to see, given how casual it was. At first, I really just expected it to be an in-and-out kind of, well, it's done, congrats you two kind of thing with our parents. However, my wife's mom kind of was upset with my wife's choice of clothing, more so in comparison of mine, and seemed to really just be wanting to make a full-on reception and everything out of this supposed to be small thing. It really hangs on my only regret for that day, as it honestly caused more stress than it was worth. For reference, I was in professional attire as I was going to be heading into work after our union, and my wife was dressed like she showed up to just pay a ticket, my ML's words. Honestly, I personally think it's hilarious and was completely intentional. The dichotomy of how we both look in the picture captures the essence of our relationship so well. Edit. Also, no, my ML isn't usually like that. She was just incredibly excited we were getting married, and she expected us to have the same Capture a perfect moment attitude. I could do this all day. Story 44. Almost everything. My choice of best man, her choice of bridesmaids, our choice of venue, the level of expenditure on it. Should have done a courthouse quickie. 25 years later, I can say the only thing I did right that day was marry her. Story 45. I was actually thinking about this last night. I got a cheap white non-wedding dress that in the end I was pretty happy with. I like it because I can wear it in the summer and not look out of place. But when I was looking at proper dresses, I tried on this one dress and it looked pretty good. Like, I'm realistic about what I look like. I mean, does this make me look fat isn't even a question. I asterisk am asterisk fat. So I asterisk look asterisk fat in everything. But this dress just smoothed over everything. Beyond that, I took my bra off and it actually did a reasonable job at holding them in place. Not a simple task for cups. It all looked normal and it fit. I made the mistake of trying to be nice and I took my nan with me. She raised me, she's great, I know she loves me, but she is emotionally retarded. I genuinely think she might be autistic. She has a poor grasp on empathy and doesn't know how to talk to people with tact. I tend to forget about this, though, until it happens. I stepped out of the changing room, expecting her to, well, react like someone who's seeing their basically asterisk daughter in a wedding dress. She did not. She just looked at me and went, "Oh yeah, that's all right," in the flattest, barely forced enthusiasm you can imagine. I wanted reassurance, or at least an opinion. I never bother with my appearance, beyond making sure I'm clean and my clothes fit flatter as best as possible. But this was my wedding dress. I wanted to feel like I would make an impact when people saw me. It just made me feel stupid, like a child dressing up. I regret not taking my friends instead. I know they'd be honest, not tell me I look good in something that I don't, but they probably would have cried. I just wanted to feel normal. Story 46. This is more of a regret with a funny story. My wife and I eloped to New Orleans to avoid all the wedding drama. My sister flew down to be best person/matron of honor witness. On our wedding day, we were just strolling through Jackson Square, admiring all the people and artwork, etc. Now, if you are familiar with No, you know it has a bit of a shady side. I always prided myself on being scam aware, but this guy engaged us in such a dynamic way. He was a shoe shine guy, and oddly, he was accompanied by a rather large bodyguard type guy. He kept telling Mai with that he could tell her where she got her shoes at, 10 for the line, 10 for the shine, meaning if he could guess, we would need to give him $10 for the bet and another $10 for a shoe shine. Now I'm thinking, there is no possible way he could know that. My soon-to-be bride and my sister were both like, just ignore him. But no, common sense got the better of me, and I took the bet. He proclaimed, "You got your shoes on your feet." I'm like foo and asterisk, he got me. Now, just as I was about to call BS, Mr. Bodyguard stepped in a bit intimidatingly and asked for payment. Lesson learned? I paid. Mr. Shoeshine polished my wife's shoes, doing a crappy job. That has now entered family legend as the Flim Flam Shoe Sham. FYI, this was about 25 years ago. I still haven't lived it down. Story 47. My wedding was over 100K. At the time, I was making great money and only going up. Right after that, my industry crashed, my father became sick, and I had to take care of my parents. Took me 8 years to recuperate and finally buy a house. If I had spent those 100K in a home, as opposed to a big party, I'd be in so much better position now than what I am today, and would have saved me years of agony and struggle. At one point, I was so broke, I even had to sell some possessions to make it to the end of the month. I matured a lot those years, became frugal, and more appreciative of money. But yeah, screw big weddings, most people don't even care anyway. Elope, buy a house. Story 48. My dress. I knew what I wanted, but I just went with something on sale, even though I felt uncomfortable in it. I wish I had been a little more pushy on what I wanted to wear. And I wish we hadn't included my husband's siblings, as they are awful people.